The ship landed on the planet Siluria at exactly noon. The sky was purple, and two suns hung in the air like giant orange eyes. Jake Miller stepped off the ship and felt the alien wind on his face. It smelled like flowers and metal at the same time. He was a simple man, 34 years old. Brown hair, strong hands. He had been a Marine for 12 years before he left the military. Now he worked as a bodyguard for important people. Today, he was protecting Ambassador Helen Cross, the first human to visit the Silurian Empire. Helen walked beside him. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent her whole life working to connect Earth with other planets. This was her biggest moment. "Stay close to me, Jake," she said, "and try not to look too serious. These aliens value smiles." Jake did not smile. He never smiled when he was working. His job was to watch for danger, not to make friends. The Silurian palace rose before them like a mountain made of glass. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Light moved through its walls and created rainbows everywhere. Guards stood at the entrance. They were tall creatures, almost 7 feet, with blue skin and 4 arms. They wore golden armor that seemed to glow from the inside. One of the guards looked down at Jake. His eyes were completely black, like deep holes in his face. "This is your protection?" the guard asked Helen. His voice was deep and cold. "This small creature?" Jake said nothing. He just looked at the guard and remembered every detail. The way he stood, the weapon on his belt, the slight shake in his left hand. Helen smiled. "Jake is the best at what he does. I trust him with my life." The guard made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans are strange. You trust the weak to protect the strong." They walked into the palace. The halls were enormous. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it. Everywhere he looked, there were aliens of different shapes and sizes. Some had wings. Some had tails. Some floated in the air without legs. They all wore expensive clothes and jewelry that sparkled like stars, and they all looked at Jake like he was dirt on their shoes. He heard them whisper as he passed. He did not understand their languages, but he understood their tone. They thought he was nothing. A small, pink, soft creature from a young planet that had only discovered space travel 50 years ago. Jake did not care what they thought. He had a job to do. They reached the throne room after walking for what felt like an hour. The doors were made of pure gold and covered with symbols that moved and changed as Jake watched them. 2 guards pushed the doors open, and Jake saw something that took his breath away. The throne room was the size of a football stadium. The floor was made of white crystal that reflected everything like a mirror. Floating lights drifted through the air like lazy fireflies. And at the far end, sitting on a throne made of living silver, was Queen Valera. She was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Jake had ever seen. Her skin was pale silver, and her hair floated around her head like it was underwater. Her eyes were ancient. They had seen things that Jake could not even imagine. She had ruled this empire for 300 years, and she looked like she could rule for 300 more. Around her stood dozens of nobles and advisors. They wore clothes made of light and shadow. They looked at Jake and Helen with curiosity and disgust. Helen walked forward and bowed deeply. Jake stayed behind her, his eyes moving across the room. He counted the guards. 24. He noted the exits. 3 visible doors, probably more hidden ones. He watched the nobles, looking for anyone who seemed nervous or angry. One man caught his attention. He stood near the queen, dressed in dark red robes. His name was Lord Moran, according to the briefing Jake had studied on the ship. He was one of the queen's most trusted advisors. But something about him felt wrong. His smile was too wide. His eyes were too sharp. And every time he looked at the queen, his jaw tightened just a little. Jake filed this information away in his mind. He did not know what it meant yet, but he would remember it. "Ambassador Helen Cross of Earth," Queen Valera said. Her voice was soft but filled the entire room. "Welcome to Siluria. Your planet is young, but your people are bold. It takes courage to reach across the stars." Helen stood up straight. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Earth is honored by your invitation. We hope this alliance will bring prosperity to both our peoples." The Queen nodded slowly. Then her silver eyes moved to Jake. She studied him for a long moment. Jake felt like she was looking through his skin and into his bones. "And who is this?" she asked. "My personal guard, Your Majesty. His name is Jake Miller." Captain Drell, the head of the Royal Guard, stepped forward. He was the biggest Silurian Jake had seen. His armor was covered with medals and symbols of honor. He looked at Jake the way a lion looks at a mouse. "Your guard carries no blade," Drell said. "No armor. No visible weapons except that small device on his hip. Does he plan to protect you with harsh words?" Some of the nobles laughed. Jake remained still. He did not react. He did not defend himself. He simply watched. Helen kept her smile steady. "Jake has protected me for 5 years. He has saved my life 3 times. I would not be standing here without him." "Impressive for a human, I suppose," Drell said. "But this is Siluria. Our enemies are not like yours. Our dangers are beyond your imagination. If trouble comes, little human, you should hide behind my guards. We are trained since birth to fight. We know no fear." Jake finally spoke. His voice was calm and quiet. "Everyone knows fear. The question is what you do when you feel it." The room went silent. Drell's 4 hands curled into fists. The nobles stared. Even Queen Valera raised one silver eyebrow. Helen touched Jake's arm gently. A warning, but Jake was not trying to start a fight. He was simply telling the truth. He had learned it in war. He had learned it in the dark places of the world where good men died and bad men lived. Fear was not the enemy. Running from fear was the enemy. Lord Moran laughed loudly, breaking the tension. "I like this human. He has spirit. Perhaps there is more to your species than we thought." The Queen smiled slightly. "Indeed, perhaps there is." The moment passed. Helen was given quarters in the palace. Jake was given a small room next to hers. It had a bed that floated in the air and a window that looked out at the purple sky. That night, Jake did not sleep. He sat by the window and watched the palace. He saw guards walking their routes. He saw servants moving through the halls. He saw Lord Moran meet with 3 guards near the garden and speak to them in hushed voices. Something was wrong in this beautiful palace. Jake could feel it in his gut. He had felt it before, in places where death was coming. The feeling had saved his life many times. He checked his weapon. He studied the map of the palace that Helen had given him. He prepared himself for whatever was coming, because Jake Miller was many things. But he was not a man who ran from danger. He was a man who walked toward it. And in this palace of gods and giants, he was just getting started. 3 days passed in the Silurian palace. Jake watched everything. He learned the patterns of the guards. He memorized the faces of the servants. He noticed which nobles smiled at the Queen and which ones only pretended to smile. The great feast was tonight. It would celebrate the signing of the Human-Silurian Trade Alliance. This was the moment Helen had worked toward her entire career. Earth would finally be recognized as an equal partner in the galaxy. Jake stood in Helen's room as she prepared for the feast. She wore a beautiful blue dress that sparkled like the ocean under moonlight. "You look worried," Helen said, looking at him in the mirror. "I'm always worried. That is my job." Helen turned to face him. "Jake, I have known you for 5 years. This is different. What is bothering you? Jake was quiet for a moment. He did not like to speak about his feelings. But Helen deserved the truth. Lord Moran, he said finally. I do not trust him. Lord Moran? He is one of the Queen's oldest friends. He has served her for over 100 years. That does not mean he is loyal. Helen frowned. What have you seen? Small things. The way he watches the Queen, the secret meetings with guards, the way his smile never reaches his eyes. Jake paused. In my experience, men who have served a long time sometimes feel they deserve more than they have received. Helen considered this. She had learned to trust Jake's instincts. They had saved her life more than once. What do you want to do? She asked. Stay close to the Queen tonight. If something happens, you will be safer near her than anywhere else. The guards will protect her first. And what about you? Jake checked his weapon for the 10th time that day. I will do what I always do. I will watch. The Great Hall was even more beautiful tonight than when Jake had first seen it. Thousands of floating lights filled the air. Music played from somewhere, soft and strange, like nothing Jake had heard on Earth. Long tables were covered with food from 100 different planets. Aliens of every shape and color filled the room. Talking and laughing and celebrating. Jake stood near the wall, away from the crowd. He was wearing his best suit, but he still looked plain compared to everyone else. A few nobles glanced at him and looked away quickly, as if seeing him was unpleasant. He did not mind. Being invisible was useful. He watched Helen move through the crowd. She was good at this. She smiled and laughed and made everyone feel important. She spoke to nobles and merchants and even some of the servants. She was building friendships that would help Earth for generations. Then, Jake noticed something strange. The servants were moving toward the exits. Not all of them. Just a few. But they moved with purpose, like they knew something was about to happen. Jake's heart began to beat faster. He had seen this before. Before a battle, smart people always made sure they were near the doors. He looked for Lord Moran. The man in red robes was speaking to 3 of the royal guards near a pillar. His voice was low, and his face was serious. Then he looked up, caught Jake watching him, and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. Jake pushed through the crowd toward Helen. People complained as he passed, but he did not care. He reached her just as she was speaking with a tall alien with green skin and golden eyes. Ambassador, Jake whispered in her ear. Something is wrong. Stay close to the Queen. Helen's smile did not change, but her eyes became sharp. She had been in dangerous situations before. She knew how to hide her fear. Are you sure? She whispered back. No, but I would rather be wrong and careful than right and dead. Helen nodded slightly. She made an excuse to the green alien and began walking toward Queen Valera. The Queen was sitting on a smaller throne at the head of the hall, watching the celebration with calm silver eyes. Jake followed. Helen. His hand moved closer to his weapon. Captain Drell stood near the Queen with his best guards. They looked proud and strong in their golden armor. They looked like nothing in the universe could hurt them. Jake hoped they were right. Helen reached the Queen and bowed. Your Majesty, this is a wonderful celebration. Earth is honored. Queen Valera smiled. It was a small smile, but it seemed genuine. I am glad you are enjoying it, Ambassador. Your people have impressed me. You are young, but you have courage. We try, Your Majesty. Jake stood behind Helen, watching the room. The music played on. People danced and laughed. Everything seemed normal, but the servants near the exits had stopped moving. They were waiting. And Lord Moran had disappeared. Jake felt cold. In his experience, when powerful men disappeared before important events, bad things followed. Ambassador, he said quietly. Lord Moran is gone. Helen's face went pale, but she kept her composure. Are you sure? I watched him walk through the side door 2 minutes ago. 3 guards followed him. The Queen noticed their whispered conversation. Is something wrong, Ambassador? Before Helen could answer, the lights went out. The great hall fell into complete darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then someone screamed. Jake grabbed Helen's arm and pulled her behind him. His other hand drew his weapon. He could not see anything in the darkness, but he could hear footsteps, many of them. Coming from all directions, emergency lights flickered on. They were dim and red, casting everything in the color of blood. Jake saw them. Dozens of figures in black armor, their faces hidden behind dark masks. They moved through the crowd like shadows, weapons raised. They surrounded the hall, blocking every exit. At their head stood Lord Moran. He had removed his red robes. Underneath, he wore black armor like the others. In his hand, he held a curved blade that glowed with purple energy. The nobles screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to go. The guards in black armor pushed them back, forming a circle around the throne. Stay calm, my friends, Lord Moran said loudly. His voice echoed through the hall. This will be over soon. I do not want to hurt anyone who does not deserve it. Queen Valera rose from her throne. Her face was calm, but her silver eyes blazed with anger. Moran, she said, what is the meaning of this betrayal? Lord Moran laughed. Betrayal? No, Your Majesty. This is justice. I have served you for 120 years. I have given you everything. And what have I received? A title, a place at your table. Nothing more. You have received my trust. My friendship. Your friendship means nothing. Moran shouted. His calm mask had cracked. Underneath was rage, hot and burning. I deserve to rule. I am smarter than you, stronger than you. I have waited long enough. He raised his blade and pointed it at the Queen. Tonight your reign ends, and mine begins. Captain Drell stepped forward, his 4 hands gripping his weapons. You will have to go through me first, traitor. Lord Moran smiled. I was hoping you would say that. He raised one hand and made a signal. More assassins poured into the hall. 50. 100. More than anyone could count. Jake looked at the enemy. He looked at the guards. He looked at the Queen. And he knew that this night would end in blood. The only question was whose blood it would be. Captain Drell roared like a wild animal. He drew his twin blades and raised them high above his head. The blades glowed with golden light, and for a moment, he looked like the hero from an old story. Royal Guard, he shouted. Form around the Queen. Protect her with your lives. The 24 guards of the Royal Guard moved into position. They were massive creatures, each one trained since childhood to fight. Their armor could stop most weapons. Their bodies were built for war. They formed a wall of gold and steel around Queen Valera. Jake pulled Helen behind the line of guards. He kept his weapon ready, but he knew it would not do much against the assassin's armor. He would have to be smart, not strong. Lord Moran watched this with an amused smile. So brave, he said. So loyal. But loyalty is not enough tonight. Numbers are what matter. He raised his hand again. Kill the guards. Spare the Queen. I want her to watch before she dies. The assassins attacked. The first wave hit the Royal Guard like a wave hitting a rock. Energy blasts filled the air with bright lights. Blades clashed against blades. The sound was terrible, like thunder and screaming mixed together. 2 guards fell in the first 3 seconds. The energy blast cut through their armor like it was paper. They did not even have time to scream. Captain Drell fought like a demon. His forearms moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow. He cut down one assassin, then another. His blades sang through the air, leaving trails of golden light. "Hold the line," he screamed. "We are the Queen's shield. We do not break." But more guards fell. 4, then 6, then 10. The assassins kept coming. Every time one fell, 2 more took their place. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single machine. Someone had trained them well. Someone had planned this attack for a long time. Jake watched the battle from behind the guard line. He watched the assassins' movements and saw patterns. They were pushing hardest on the left side. They were trying to create a gap. He moved Helen to the right, closer to the Queen. "Stay here," he said. "Do not move." "Jake, what are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." The guard line began to bend. The assassins pushed harder. The guards who were still standing looked tired. Their perfect form was breaking. Their movements were getting slower, and Jake saw something else. Something that made his stomach turn cold. Fear. He saw fear in the guards' eyes. These warriors who had trained since birth, who wore armor worth more than entire cities, who had never known defeat. They were afraid. They were facing something they had never faced before. An enemy who did not care about honor or tradition. An enemy who simply wanted to win at any cost. Captain Drell saw it too. "Cowards." He shouted at his guards. "Stand and fight. You are the Royal Guard. You do not run." But one guard stepped back. Then another. Their formations broke like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Lord Moran laughed. "Look at them, Your Majesty. Look at your mighty protectors. See how they tremble." An assassin got through the gap. He swung his blade at Queen Valera. Captain Drell threw himself in the way and blocked the strike, but the force knocked him to his knees. "Help me!" Drell screamed to his guards. "Form up! Form up!" But they did not form up. The fear had taken hold of them. They looked at the endless waves of assassins. They looked at their fallen brothers. And they made a choice. They ran. One by one, the royal guards turned and fled. They pushed through the screaming nobles. They fought each other to reach the exits. They threw away their weapons and their honor and their duty. Jake watched in disbelief. These were the mightiest warriors in the galaxy. These were the soldiers who had mocked him for being weak. And now they were running like frightened children. Captain Drell was the last to break. He stood alone against the assassins for 5 long seconds. His blades moved in desperate circles, blocking strike after strike. But he was surrounded. There was no hope. He looked at the Queen. His eyes were filled with shame. "Forgive me," he whispered. Then he dropped his blades and ran. He pushed past Jake without even seeing him. He disappeared through a servant's door, his metals clanking against his armor as he fled. The noble guests screamed and scattered. They climbed over each other trying to escape. Some were cut down by assassins. Others were crushed by the crowd. The beautiful great hall had become a nightmare. And in the middle of it all, Queen Valera stood alone. The assassins formed a circle around her. Their black armor reflected the red emergency lights, making them look like demons from the deepest hell. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Lord Moran walked through his soldiers like a king walking through his garden. He stopped in front of the Queen and smiled. 300 years, he said. 300 years you have ruled. And now look. Your guards have abandoned you. Your people have fled. You have nothing left. Queen Valera's face was calm. If she was afraid, she did not show it. I have my dignity. That is something you will never understand. Dignity? Moran laughed bitterly. Dignity does not stop blades. Dignity does not win wars. Power wins wars. And tonight, I have all the power. He raised his blade. The purple energy crackled along its edge. Any last words, Your Majesty? The queen closed her eyes. She was ready to die. She had lived 300 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. If this was her end, she would face it without fear. But the end did not come, because someone stepped between the queen and Lord Moran. Someone, small and soft and completely out of place in this battle of giants. Jake Miller stood, with his back to the queen. His weapon was in his hand. His eyes were steady. Lord Moran stopped. He stared at Jake like he was looking at an insect. You? He sounded confused. The little human? Jake said nothing. He just raised his weapon and aimed it at Moran's face. Move aside, Moran said. This does not concern you. Your ambassador is free to leave. This is between me and the queen. Jake still said nothing. He did not move. Are you deaf, human? I said move. No. The single word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Around them, the assassins shifted uncomfortably. The nobles who had not escaped stopped running to watch. Even Queen Valera opened her eyes. Lord Moran's smile faded. You will die if you stay there. Maybe, Jake said, but you will have to kill me first. 1 human against 100 warriors? You cannot win. Jake's finger tightened on his trigger. I do not care about winning. I care about doing what is right. And right now, what is right is standing between you and the queen. Lord Moran studied him for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. Brave, he said. Foolish, but brave. I almost respect you, human. He raised his blade. Almost. Jake took a deep breath. He knew he was probably going to die, but he had known that feeling before. He had made peace with death a long time ago. At least he would die standing. Captain Drell roared like a wild animal. He drew his twin blades and raised them high above his head. The blades glowed with golden light, and for a moment, he looked like the hero from an old story. Royal Guard, he shouted. Form around the queen. Protect her with your lives. The 24 guards of the Royal Guard moved into position. They were massive creatures, each one trained since childhood to fight. Their armor could stop most weapons. Their bodies were built for war. They formed a wall of gold and steel around Queen Valera. Jake pulled Helen behind the line of guards. He kept his weapon ready, but he knew it would not do much against the assassin's armor. He would have to be smart, not strong. Lord Moran watched this with an amused smile. So brave, he said. So loyal. But loyalty is not enough tonight. Numbers are what matter. He raised his hand again. Kill the guards. Spare the queen. I want her to watch before she dies. The assassins attacked. The first wave hit the Royal Guard like a wave hitting a rock. Energy blasts filled the air with bright lights. Blades clashed against blades. The sound was terrible, like thunder and screaming mixed together. 2 guards fell in the first 3 seconds. The energy blast cut through their armor like it was paper. They did not even have time to scream. Captain Drell fought like a demon. His forearms moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow. He cut down one assassin, then another. His blades sang through the air, leaving trails of golden light. Hold the line, he screamed. We are the Queen's shield. We do not break. But more guards fell. 4, then 6, then 10. The assassins kept coming. Every time one fell, 2 more took their place. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single machine. Someone had trained them well. Someone had planned this attack for a long time. Jake watched the battle from behind the guard line. He watched the assassins' movements and saw patterns. They were pushing hardest on the left side. They were trying to create a gap. He moved Helen to the right, closer to the queen. Stay here, he said. Do not move. Jake, what are you going to do? Whatever I have to. The guard line began to bend. The assassins pushed harder. The guards who were still standing looked tired. Their perfect form was breaking. Their movements were getting slower, and Jake saw something else. Something that made his stomach turn cold. Fear. He saw fear in the guards' eyes. These warriors who had trained since birth, who wore armor worth more than entire cities, who had never known defeat. They were afraid. They were facing something they had never faced before. An enemy who did not care about honor or tradition. An enemy who simply wanted to win at any cost. Captain Drell saw it too. Cowards. He shouted at his guards. Stand and fight. You are the... Lord Moran swung his blade at Jake's head. The purple energy crackled through the air like lightning. Jake ducked. The blade passed so close that he felt the heat on his scalp. He rolled to the side and fired 3 shots at Moran's chest. The shots hit Moran's armor and bounced off. But they pushed him back. They gave Jake 1 second to breathe. Kill him, Moran ordered his assassins. Kill him now. 2 assassins rushed forward. They were faster than any human Jake had ever fought. Their blades cut through the air in perfect arcs. Jake did not try to block. His body was too small, his weapon too weak. Instead, he moved. He slipped between them like water flowing around rocks. He grabbed one assassin's arm and used his own force against him, spinning him into his partner. The 2 assassins crashed together. Jake fired twice into the gap between their helmets and armor. They fell. The watching nobles gasped. Even some of the assassins hesitated. He killed 2 of them, someone whispered. The human killed 2 of them. Lord Moran's face turned red with anger. What are you waiting for? There are 100 of you and 1 of him. Attack. More assassins came. 3 this time, then 5, then more. They surrounded Jake and attacked from every direction. Jake knew he could not beat them in a fair fight. So he did not fight fair. He grabbed a fallen guard's knife from the ground and threw it into an assassin's throat. He kicked one enemy in the knee and heard the joint crack. He used another assassin as a shield against his comrades' blades. He was not fighting like a soldier. He was fighting like a man who had nothing to lose. Every dirty trick he had learned in 20 years of combat, he used now. Eyes, throats, joints. He attacked the weak points that armor could not protect. An assassin's blade slashed across his ribs. Jake felt the pain like fire spreading through his body. Blood soaked his shirt. But he did not stop. He could not stop. He grabbed the assassin who had cut him and pulled him close. Too close for the assassin to swing his blade. Jake slammed his forehead into the assassin's face. The helmet cracked. The assassin fell. What is he? One of the assassins shouted. Why won't he die? Jake did not answer. He was too busy fighting. His vision was getting blurry from blood loss and exhaustion. His body screamed at him to stop. But somewhere deep inside him, a fire was burning that refused to go out. He thought about his father, who had worked in a factory until his hands bled. He thought about his mother, who had raised 4 children alone after his father died. He thought about the Marines who had fought beside him in wars that the galaxy would never know about. Humans were not strong. Humans were not fast. Humans did not have armor or advanced technology. But humans had something else. They had a stubborn refusal to give up. They had a fire in their hearts that burned even when everything else was gone. And tonight, Jake Miller was going to show the galaxy what that meant. An energy blast hit his shoulder. The pain was incredible, like someone had pressed a hot iron into his skin. Jake stumbled but did not fall. He turned and fired his last 3 bullets into the assassin who had shot him. His gun was empty now. He threw it at another enemy's face and dove for a fallen blade. The blade was too heavy for him. It was designed for a Silurian warrior with 4 arms. not a human with two. But Jake did not need to be graceful. He just needed to be dangerous. He swung the blade in wild arcs. The assassins backed away, surprised by his ferocity. Jake pressed forward, attacking even though every movement sent waves of pain through his wounded body. Lord Moran watched in disbelief. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "He is just a human. Just a weak, primitive human." Behind Jake, Queen Valera watched with silver eyes that had seen 300 years of history. She had seen great warriors and terrible battles. She had seen species rise and fall, but she had never seen anything like this. This small creature, this human that everyone had mocked and dismissed, was fighting like a force of nature. He was covered in blood. His body was broken. By every measure, he should have been dead 10 times over, but he was still standing, still fighting, still protecting her. Why? She was not his queen. This was not his planet. He owed her nothing. He could have run like the guards. He could have escaped with his ambassador. No one would have blamed him, but he had chosen to stay. He had chosen to fight. He had chosen to die for someone he barely knew. The queen felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt hope. Jake's blade finally broke against an assassin's armor. The metal shattered into pieces. Jake dropped the useless handle and raised his fists. "Still fighting?" Lord Moran laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "You have no weapon, human. You have no strength left. Just lie down and die." Jake spat blood onto the crystal floor. "You first." He charged at the nearest assassin. The assassin swung his blade, expecting Jake to dodge. But Jake did not dodge. He took the cut across his arm and grabbed the assassin's wrist. He pulled the assassin close and drove his thumb into the creature's eye. The assassin screamed and dropped his blade. Jake caught it before it hit the ground. Now he had a weapon again. He did not know how long he fought. Time lost all meaning. There was only the next enemy, the next strike, the next breath. His body moved on instinct alone. His mind had retreated to a quiet place where there was no pain, no fear, no doubt. Assassins fell around him. 5, 7, 10, 12. The others began to hesitate. They looked at this small human creature who refused to die, and they felt something they had never felt before in their lives. They felt afraid. "Push forward." Moran screamed. "He is one man. One man cannot stop us." But his assassins did not push forward. They circled Jake like wolves circling a wounded bear. They did not want to be the next one to face him. Jake stood in the center of the circle, swaying on his feet. His body was covered in cuts and burns. His breath came in ragged gasps. His vision was fading in and out, but he was still standing. And he was still between the enemy and the queen. "You should have run," he said to Moran, his voice barely a whisper. "Now it is too late." Moran's face twisted with rage. "Kill him. All of you, kill him now. I do not care how many of you die. Kill this human insect." The assassins prepared to charge. Jake raised his stolen blade one more time. He knew this was probably his last stand. He knew he was probably going to die, but he was not afraid. He had done his duty. He had stood when everyone else ran. Whatever happened next, he would face it like a marine, like a human. Then, from somewhere in the palace, he heard a sound. A horn, a war horn. And Lord Moran's face went pale. Reinforcements were coming. The doors of the great hall exploded inward. Silurian soldiers poured through, their weapons blazing with golden light. They were the Queen's army, called back from the borders by someone who had escaped to chaos. Lord Moran looked at the soldiers, then at Jake, then at the Queen. His dreams of power crumbled in his eyes like sandcastles in a storm. "No," he whispered. "No, This was supposed to work. I planned everything. You planned for guards, Jake said, blood dripping from his chin. You planned for nobles. You did not plan for me. Moran raised his blade and charged at Jake with a scream of pure rage. He was done with plans. He was done with patience. If he was going to die, he would take this annoying human with him. Jake watched him come. His body had nothing left. His arms felt like they were filled with sand. His legs could barely hold him up. But he had one more trick. As Moran swung his blade in a killing arc. Jake did not try to block. He did not try to dodge. Instead, he stepped forward, inside the arc of the swing. The blade cut across his back instead of his chest. It hurt. Everything hurt. But it was not a killing blow. And now Jake was inside Moran's guard. He grabbed Moran's arm with both hands and twisted. The blade fell from Moran's grip. Jake kicked it away and drove his knee into Moran's stomach. The traitor doubled over, gasping for air. Jake grabbed his head and brought it down to meet his rising knee. There was a crack and Moran collapsed to the floor. Unconscious. Jake stood over him, swaying like a tree in a hurricane. The soldiers had surrounded the remaining assassins. The battle was over. He had won. Jake looked at Queen Valera. She was safe. The queen was safe. It is done, he whispered. Then his legs gave out, and the world went black. Jake woke up 3 days later in a room made of light. He was lying on something soft, and his body was wrapped in bandages that glowed with gentle blue energy. He tried to move and felt pain everywhere. But it was a distant pain, like someone else was feeling it. Do not try to move. Jake turned his head. Queen Valera was sitting beside his bed. She looked different without her throne and her guards. She looked almost human. How long? Jake asked. His voice was rough like sandpaper. 3 days. The doctor said you should have died. Your wounds were too severe. They said no creature could survive what you went through. Jake almost smiled. Humans are hard to kill, so I have learned. They sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, Jake could see the purple sky of Siluria. The 2 suns were setting, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink. Your guards, Jake said finally. They ran. Yes. The queen's voice was heavy with sadness. They did. I am sorry. Valera looked at him with surprise. You are sorry? You saved my life. You stood when everyone else fled. Why would you apologize? Jake looked at the ceiling. Because now you know the truth. We are not all brave. Not all honorable. Humans, aliens, we are the same. Most people run when things get hard. The queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand over his. I have lived for 300 years, she said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen warriors in golden armor and generals with 1,000 victories. But I have never seen courage like yours. Jake did not know what to say. He was not used to compliments. The galaxy calls humans primitive, the queen continued. They call you weak, unremarkable. They think you are nothing more than children playing at space travel. She squeezed his hand gently. They are fools, and I will make sure they learn. Over the next few weeks, Jake recovered slowly. The Silurian doctors were amazed by his healing. They said human bodies were surprisingly tough, able to repair damage that would kill most species. Ambassador Helen visited him every day. She told him about the political situation. Lord Moran was in prison, waiting for trial. Captain Drell and the guards who fled had been stripped of their ranks and sent into exile. The Human-Silurian Alliance had been signed and was already changing the galaxy. You are famous now, Helen said one afternoon. Every news channel in the galaxy is talking about you. The human who stood before the queen. They are calling you a hero. Jake shook his head. I am not a hero. I just did my job. Jake, you fought 100 assassins alone. You saved the life of the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. That is more than just doing your job. I did what anyone would do. Helen laughed softly. That is where you are wrong, Jake. Anyone did not do it. The guards did not do it. The nobles did not do it. Only you did. A month later, Jake was finally able to stand. Queen Valeera held a ceremony in the rebuilt Great Hall. The room was filled with nobles, ambassadors, and leaders from 100 different worlds. They had all come to see one thing. They had come to see the human who would not run. Jake walked slowly to the throne, still limping from his wounds. He wore his simple suit, refusing the fancy clothes that had been offered to him. He was not a noble. He was not a warrior. He was just a man who had done what he believed was right. Queen Valeera stood as he approached. She was holding something in her hands, a metal made of living silver that changed shape as it moved. Jake Miller of Earth, she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. You came to our world as a stranger. You were mocked and dismissed by those who thought themselves better than you. And when the darkness came, when my own guards abandoned me, you alone stood firm. She placed the metal around his neck. It felt warm against his skin. From this day forward, you will be known as the Shield of Siluria. Your name will be remembered as long as stars burn in the sky. And Earth, your home, will forever be a friend to my empire. The crowd erupted in applause. Nobles who had once looked at Jake with disgust now looked at him with respect. Ambassadors from distant worlds studied him with new eyes, wondering what other secrets humanity was hiding. Jake looked out at the crowd and felt uncomfortable. He did not like attention. He did not like praise. He just wanted to go home and see his mother and eat her terrible cooking. But he also felt something else. Something he had not felt since leaving the Marines. He felt pride, not pride in himself. Pride in what he represented. Pride in humanity. For 300 years, the galaxy had thought humans were nothing special. Just another young species stumbling through the stars. But tonight they had learned something new. They had learned that humans do not give up. They had learned that humans do not run. They had learned that when everything seems lost, when all hope is gone, humans find a way to keep fighting, because that is what humans do. They stand. They fight. They survive. And they protect those who cannot protect themselves. Jake Miller smiled. A real smile. For the first time in years, the galaxy would remember this night. They would remember the feast and the betrayal, and the guards who fled. But most of all, they would remember one simple truth. When the guards fled, one human stood before the queen, and he did not move.